The lone gunshot echoed across the sprawling Montana landscape as Flora Sullivan ducked behind the weathered post of the general store, her heart pounding like a stampede against her ribs. It was 1879, and the promise of a new life in the West had turned into a nightmare she couldn't escape. Her trembling fingers clutched the tattered shawl around her shoulders, the bruises beneath it a testament to the man who had vowed to love her but instead became her tormentor. "You can't hide forever, Flora." Harrison's voice boomed through the dusty main street of Willow Creek, causing the few townsfolk brave enough to be outside to scurry into buildings like startled prairie dogs. "A wife belongs with her husband." Flora pressed herself against the rough wooden wall, tears streaming down her dirt-smudged face. 6 months of marriage had taught her what Harrison Yates truly was: not the charming businessman who'd courted her back east, but a monster who unleashed his rage behind closed doors. "Need some help, madam?" The low, steady voice nearly made her jump out of her skin. She turned to find herself staring into the most striking blue eyes she'd ever seen. They belonged to a tall man with a weathered face, stubbled jaw, and a worn Stetson pulled low over his brow. A silver star glinted on his leather vest. "The town's deputy. Please," she whispered. "My husband, he'll—" "Flora," Harrison's voice was closer now, "don't make me drag you home in front of the whole town." The deputy's eyes narrowed as he glanced toward the street, then back to Flora's frightened face. "That him making all the racket," she nodded, clutching her shawl tighter. "Harrison Yates. We've been married 6 months. He wasn't like this back in Boston." "The banker." The deputy's jaw tightened. "Figures, men like that think they own everything they touch." He studied her face, noting the fading bruise near her temple that her hastily arranged hair couldn't quite hide. "You trying to leave him?" "I was," she whispered, desperation creeping into her voice. "I packed a bag while he was at the bank, but he came home early. I barely got away, but he'll kill me if I run." The deputy's expression hardened. "Then we'll ride faster than his hate." Something in those simple words kindled a spark of hope in Flora's chest. "Who are you?" "Deputy Beau Hayes, madam." He tipped his hat slightly. "And I don't take kindly to men who hurt women, especially not in my town." A crash from the street made Flora flinch. Harrison was searching the alleyways now, his rage building with each passing minute. "My ranch is about 15 miles outside town," Beau said, his voice low and urgent. "My horse is tied behind the jail. If we can get there without being seen, we can be gone before he knows which way to look." "But he'll come after me," Flora said. "He won't stop." Beau's eyes met hers, steady and sure. "Let him try." Something about his quiet confidence made her believe him. Flora nodded, and Beau carefully peered around the corner of the building. "Stay close," he murmured. "We'll cut through the livery stable." With Beau leading the way, they moved swiftly through the shadows behind the row of buildings that made up Willow Creek's main street. Flora's heart threatened to burst from her chest every time a board creaked beneath their feet or a dog barked in the distance. The jail was a small, sturdy building set apart from the others. Behind it, a magnificent Palomino stallion stood waiting, its golden coat gleaming in the late afternoon sun. "That's Thunder," Beau said, quickly untying the reins. "Fastest horse in the territory. Hayes." The bellow came from the street, causing both of them to freeze. Harrison Yates stood at the end of the alley, his face contorted with rage, a revolver clutched in his hand. "Step away from my wife." Beau moved with lightning speed, pushing Flora behind him. "She's not your property, Yates." Harrison's laugh was ugly. "I have a marriage certificate that says otherwise. Flora, come here now, or I swear I'll put a bullet in your new friend." Flora trembled, but Beau remained steady beside her. "Mr. Yates," he called, his voice carrying the weight of authority, "I'm giving you one chance to lower that weapon and walk away." "Or what?" Harrison sneered. "The sheriff's 3 towns over at that trial. You're just a deputy with delusions of grandeur." "And you're just a coward who beats women," Beau replied evenly. Harrison's face darkened as he raised his gun. "I'm going to enjoy watching you bleed, Hayes." The gunshot cracked through the air, but it wasn't Harrison who had fired. From the roof of the jail, Sheriff Jim Morgan's rifle barrel smoked as Harrison screamed, clutching his shattered wrist, his revolver lying useless in the dirt. "Actually," the older man called down, "the trial ended early." He climbed down the ladder on the side of the building, keeping his rifle trained on Harrison. "Beau, you want to tell me what's going on here?" Mrs. Yates was just explaining how her husband's been using her as a punching bag, Beau replied, his eyes never leaving Harrison. The sheriff's weathered face hardened as he looked at Flora's bruised face. "That true, madam?" Flora nodded, finding her voice at last. "Yes, sir, for months now." "Well then," Sheriff Morgan said, "Mr. Yates, you're under arrest for assault and attempted murder of an officer." Harrison's face went from rage to calculation in an instant. "You can't do this. I own half the businesses in this town. One night in that cell and I'll be out by morning." "Maybe," the sheriff conceded, "but that gives the lady here a head start." He glanced at Beau. "Take Mrs. Yates somewhere safe. I'll handle this piece of work." Beau nodded, turning to Flora. "Still want to ride out to my place?" The realization that she might actually escape brought fresh tears to her eyes. "Yes, please." With surprising gentleness, Beau helped her up onto Thunder's back before swinging up behind her. "Hold on tight," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. As they rode out of town, Flora couldn't help looking back at the furious face of her husband as the sheriff led him away. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel something dangerously close to hope. The land opened up before them, the vast Montana territory stretching endlessly under the big sky. Flora had never ridden so fast in her life. The powerful stallion ate up the miles, his hooves thundering across the plains as Beau guided him with expert hands. Despite the circumstances, she found herself marveling at the wild beauty around them, golden grasslands that rippled like water in the breeze, distant mountains painted purple against the horizon, and the enormous sky that seemed to go on forever. "You holding up all right?" Beau called over the wind rushing past them. "Yes," she answered, surprised to find it was true. There was something exhilarating about this mad dash for freedom, something that made her feel more alive than she had in months. They rode until the sun began to set, painting the landscape in fiery hues of orange and red. Just as twilight was settling over the land, a small ranch came into view nestled against a backdrop of pine-covered hills. A modest but well-maintained cabin stood surrounded by corrals and outbuildings. "Welcome to the Lazy H," Beau said as they approached. "It's not much, but it's home." "It's beautiful," Flora replied honestly. After the oppressive grandeur of Harrison's townhouse, the simple, honest lines of Beau's ranch were a relief. He helped her down from Thunder, his hands strong and steady at her waist. For a moment they stood close and Flora felt a strange flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with fear. "You must be exhausted," he said, stepping back. "Come on inside, I'll fix us something to eat." The interior of the cabin was surprisingly cozy. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall, with comfortable-looking furniture arranged around it. Bookshelves lined another wall, filled with volumes that surprised Flora, classics of literature, history books, even poetry. "You read Wordsworth?" she asked, running her fingers along the spine of a well-worn book. Beau looked slightly embarrassed as he lit the lamps. "When you spend most nights alone, books make good company." While Beau busied himself at the iron stove, Flora took stock of her situation. She'd fled with nothing but the clothes on her back and a few dollars tucked into her boot, a precaution she'd started taking when Harrison began monitoring her spending. "I don't have much," she said quietly. "I can't pay you for your help." Beau turned from the stove, his expression serious. "I'm not looking for payment, Mrs. Yates." "Flora," she corrected him. "Please, I'd rather not use that name if I can help it." He nodded. "Flora then, and I'm helping you because it's the right thing to do. No decent man could turn away someone in your situation." As they ate a simple but hearty meal of beans, bacon, and cornbread, Flora studied her unlikely rescuer. There was something contradictory about Beau Hayes. His hands were calloused from ranch work, but they handled his utensils with unexpected grace. His speech was straightforward but educated. And while he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who knew how to handle trouble, there was a gentleness to his manner that put her at ease. "How long have you been deputy?" she asked. "Going on 5 years now," he answered. "Sheriff Morgan was my father's friend. When Pa died, Jim offered me the job, said I needed something to keep me out of trouble while I got the ranch on its feet. And have you, kept out of trouble, I mean? A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Until today, more or less, the reminder of their situation sobered them both. What happens now? Flora asked, setting down her fork. We get some rest, Beau said practically. Tomorrow I'll ride back to town and see what's happening with Yates. Sheriff will hold him as long as he can, but Harrison has money and influence, Flora finished for him. He'll be out soon and he'll come looking for me, Beau nodded. That's why we need to figure out our next move. Do you have family anywhere, someone you could go to? Flora shook her head. My parents died 2 years ago. It's why I agreed to marry Harrison so quickly. He seemed kind and I was alone. You're not alone now, Beau said, his eyes meeting hers across the table. That night, Flora slept in Beau's bed while he took a bedroll by the fire. Despite her exhaustion, sleep came fitfully. Every creak of the cabin settling, every whisper of wind outside made her start awake, certain that Harrison had found her. When dawn finally broke, she rose and found Beau already up, making coffee. I thought I'd head to town after breakfast, he said, handing her a steaming cup. Flora wrapped her hands around the warm mug. I'm coming with you, Beau frowned. That's not a good idea. If Yates is out, I need to face him sometime, she interrupted. And I need clothes, personal items. Besides, I want to file for divorce. His eyebrows rose. Divorce. That won't be easy, especially not here. I don't care, Flora said, lifting her chin. I won't live in fear anymore, and I won't let him control me, even from a distance. A slow smile spread across Beau's face. You're a surprising woman, Flora Sullivan. She blinked, startled by his use of her maiden name. How did you? Sheriff mentioned it when he was arresting Yates, said it would be a shame if such a pretty name got permanently attached to such an ugly character. He shrugged. I agreed with him. 2 hours later, they rode into Willow Creek, tension radiating from Flora's every pore. The town seemed to be going about its business as usual, but she noticed the curious glances, the whispered conversations that stopped as they passed. The sheriff's office was their first stop. Jim Morgan looked up from his desk as they entered, his expression grim. I was hoping you'd stay away a bit longer, he said to Flora. Is he out? Beau asked tersely. The sheriff nodded. This morning, Judge Collier came by special to set bail. Yates paid it and was out within the hour. Where is he now? Flora asked, proud that her voice didn't shake. Holed up at the bank, last I heard, called a meeting of the board of directors. The sheriff leaned back in his chair. He's making noise about pressing charges against me for excessive force. Beau's jaw tightened. He was about to shoot me. You and I know that, Morgan replied, but Yates is claiming he was just trying to protect his distraught, confused wife from being abducted. Flora made a sound of outrage. That's absurd. It is, the sheriff agreed. But absurd stories have a way of becoming truth when there's enough money behind them. He looked at Flora with genuine concern. You need to be careful, Mrs. Yates. Men like your husband don't take kindly to losing what they consider theirs. I'm filing for divorce, she said firmly. The sheriff exchanged a glance with Beau. That's going to make him even more dangerous. I'll be with her, Beau stated, his tone making it clear this wasn't up for debate. They left the sheriff's office and made their way to the law office of Albert Finch, the only lawyer in Willow Creek. The elderly attorney listened to Flora's story with increasing distress, his bushy white eyebrows drawing together as she detailed Harrison's abuse. This is most irregular, he said when she finished. Divorce is difficult to obtain under the best of circumstances. Given Mr. Yates's position in the community and the delicate nature of your accusations, it will be exceptionally challenging. I don't care how difficult it is, Flora insisted. I want it done. Mr. Finch studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Very well, I shall draw up the papers. But you should be prepared for a fight, Mrs. Yates. Your husband will not relinquish you easily. He doesn't have a choice, Beau said from his position by the window, where he'd been keeping watch on the street below. She's not his property. In the eyes of the law, I'm afraid a wife is very much her husband's property, the lawyer said with a sigh. But we shall do our best. Where can I send the papers when they're ready? Before Flora could answer, Beau spoke up. My ranch, she'll be staying with me. Mr. Finch's eyebrows shot up even further. Deputy Hayes, while I appreciate your chivalry, that arrangement will not help Mrs. Yates's case. A woman living unchaperoned with a man not her husband, I have a spare cabin for the ranch hand I hire during roundup, Beau interrupted. She'll stay there, perfectly proper. The lawyer didn't look convinced, but he nodded. As you wish, I shall have the papers ready in a day or two. Their final stop was the general store, where Flora quickly selected the necessities she would need. The shop owner's wife, Mrs. Peterson, took her aside while Beau settled the bill. You're doing the right thing, dear, the older woman whispered, pressing a package into Flora's hands. I added some things you might need, no charge. Her eyes darted to Beau. He's a good man, that one, not like Flora. The cold voice from the doorway made every muscle in Flora's body tense. Harrison Yates stood there, immaculately dressed as always, his injured wrist bandaged and supported in a sling. His handsome face was composed, but his eyes burned with barely contained fury. Harrison, she acknowledged, instinctively stepping back. I've been worried sick about you, he said, his voice dripping with false concern. After your episode yesterday, I've been searching everywhere. Episode? Flora repeated incredulously. The doctor says it might be female hysteria, Harrison continued, addressing the room at large now. Several customers had stopped to watch the drama unfold. My poor wife has been suffering terribly. Imagining things, having fits of temper, I blame myself for not seeking treatment sooner. The calculated performance made Flora's blood boil. This was how he'd always operated, twisting the truth, making her seem unstable while presenting himself as the concerned, long-suffering husband. I'm not sick, Harrison, she said clearly, and I'm not coming back to you, ever. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course you are, my dear. You're my wife. Not for much longer, Flora replied, drawing strength from Beau's solid presence as he moved to stand beside her. Mr. Finch is drawing up divorce papers as we speak. A flash of genuine surprise crossed Harrison's face before his mask of concern returned. You see, he said to the onlookers, confused and irrational, divorce, as if such a thing were possible. It's not only possible, Beau interjected, it's happening. Now, Mr. Yates, I suggest you step aside and let Mrs. Sullivan be on her way. Harrison's eyes narrowed at Beau's deliberate use of Flora's maiden name. This doesn't concern you, Deputy. When you pulled a gun on me yesterday, you made it my concern, Beau replied evenly. A tense silence filled the store. Harrison looked from Beau to Flora, calculation evident in his gaze. Finally, he stepped aside with exaggerated courtesy. By all means, Flora, go with your rescuer, but remember, a respectable woman has no life without her husband. When you come to your senses, I'll be waiting, his voice hardened, and I'll be watching. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, both of them lost in thought. Flora couldn't shake the chill of Harrison's parting words. She knew him well enough to recognize the threat behind them. He won't give up, she said as Beau's ranch came into view. I know, he replied simply. I've put you in danger. I should leave, go somewhere far away where he can't find me. Beau reined thunder to a stop, turning in the saddle to look at her. Is that what you want, to run? Flora considered the question seriously. No, she finally admitted. I'm tired of running, of being afraid. I want to stand my ground for once. A smile spread slowly across his face. Good, because I wasn't planning on letting you face this alone anyway. The days that followed settled into an unexpected rhythm. True to his word, Beau installed Flora in the small but comfortable cabin about 50 yards from the main house. During the day, she helped with ranch chores, surprising herself with how quickly she adapted to the physical work after years of city living. In the evenings, they would share meals, talking long into the night. Flora learned that Beau had been born and raised in Montana, the son of a rancher and a schoolteacher. He'd attended college back east, explaining his appreciation for literature, but had returned home when his father fell ill. After his father's death, he'd taken on the deputy position to supplement the ranch's income during lean times. In turn, she told him about her childhood in St. Louis, her love of music and art, and her dreams of traveling that had been put on hold when her parents died and left her with mounting debts. Harrison's proposal had seemed like salvation at the time. He was so charming at first, she explained one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Attentive, generous, it wasn't until after the wedding that he changed or showed his true self, I suppose. What happened? Beau asked gently. Flora stared out at the horizon. The first time it was because dinner was cold when he came home late. He apologized afterwards, said it would never happen again, but it did for smaller and smaller things. A misplaced letter, speaking to another man at church. Eventually, he didn't even need a reason. Beau's hand covered hers where it rested on the porch railing. You didn't deserve any of it, Flora. The simple statement, spoken with such certainty, brought tears to her eyes. Thank you for believing me. Most people wouldn't. Most people are fools, he replied with a shrug that made her laugh despite her tears. On the 5th day, Mr. Finch's clerk delivered the divorce papers. As Flora signed her name with a shaking hand, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. What happens now? She asked Beau after the clerk had ridden away. Now Harrison gets served with the papers, he explained, and then we wait to see what he does. They didn't have to wait long. The next morning, Sheriff Morgan rode out to the ranch, his expression grave. Yates got the papers last night, he said without preamble. He's on a rampage, fired half the bank staff, threatened Finch with ruin, and put out a $500 reward for information on Flora's whereabouts. Beau whistled. That's a lot of money in these parts. Enough to turn even decent folks into informants, the sheriff agreed. It gets worse. He's claiming you kidnapped his wife and are holding her against her will, got 3 witnesses who'll swear they saw you force her onto your horse. That's ridiculous, Flora exclaimed. Anyone could see I went willingly. Anyone who wanted to see the truth, maybe, Morgan replied. But Yates is painting a powerful picture, the upstanding businessman versus the rough deputy who stole his fragile wife. What can we do? Flora asked. Fight back, Beau said firmly. Flora, would you be willing to sign a statement detailing the abuse? We'll get Doc Miller to examine you, document any remaining bruises or old injuries. Between that and the divorce papers, we might convince Judge Collier to issue a restraining order against Yates. The sheriff nodded approvingly. It's worth a try, but in the meantime, both of you should watch your backs. Yates isn't the type to fight fair. After the sheriff left, Flora found Beau checking his rifle on the porch. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. This isn't your fight. He looked up, his blue eyes intense. It became my fight the moment I saw you hiding behind that building, terrified of the man who vowed to protect you. Something in his gaze made her heart race. Why? She whispered. Why risk everything for someone you barely know? Beau set the rifle aside and stood, moving closer until they were mere inches apart. Because in the past week, I've learned more about you than most men learn about their wives in years. I know that you hum when you're concentrating, that you cry at poetry but laugh at yourself for doing it. That you're stronger than you think and braver than you know, his voice softened. And because every day I find myself wanting to know more. Before Flora could respond, a shot rang out, splintering the porch railing beside them. Beau reacted instantly, pulling Flora down and covering her body with his own as more bullets whizzed overhead. Crawl inside, he ordered, reaching for his rifle. Not without you, she insisted, her heart pounding with terror not for herself but for him. Another volley of shots forced them to press closer to the porch floor. On 3, Beau whispered. 1, 2, 3, they scrambled through the door as bullets thudded into the wood behind them. Inside, Beau moved quickly to extinguish the lamps while Flora crouched behind the heavy oak table he'd appended for cover. Can you shoot? He asked, pulling a revolver from a drawer. My father taught me, she answered, taking the gun with surprisingly steady hands. Good, stay here. I'm going to try to circle around behind them. No, Flora grabbed his arm, there could be several of them out there. Which is why I need to flank them before they can do the same to us. He hesitated, then leaned forward and pressed a swift, hard kiss to her lips. For luck, he murmured. Before she could react, he was gone, slipping out through the back door. Flora positioned herself at the window, peering cautiously through a crack in the shutters. In the moonlight, she could make out at least 3 figures moving among the trees at the edge of the clearing. Hired guns, most likely Harrison preferred to let others do his dirty work. A shot from the direction of the barn told her Beau had made his move. 2 of the attackers turned toward the sound, giving Flora a clear view of them. She steadied her breathing the way her father had taught her, took aim and fired. One of the men cried out, clutching his shoulder as he fell. The others returned fire, forcing Flora to duck down as bullets shattered the window above her. The gunfight seemed to go on forever, though it probably lasted only minutes. Eventually, the shooting stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. Flora held her breath, straining to hear any sound that would tell her what was happening. "Flora," Beau's voice calling from outside. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she called back. "Are they gone?" Two ran off. One's wounded not badly, but enough to keep him put until the sheriff gets here. Relief flooded through her as Beau came through the door, a cut on his forehead but otherwise unharmed. Without thinking, she threw herself into his arms. "I thought they might have—" She couldn't finish the sentence. His arms tightened around her. "It takes more than a few hired guns to bring down a Hayes." The wounded attacker turned out to be a drifter named Jenkins, who readily admitted Harrison Yates had hired him and his companions to teach the deputy a lesson and bring back the crazy wife. The sheriff arrested him, promising to send men after the other two. "This changes things," Morgan told them grimly. "Attempted murder is a hanging offense. Yates is going to be desperate now." "Good," Beau said, his arm around Flora's shoulders. "Desperate men make mistakes." The sheriff didn't look convinced. "Maybe, but they're also dangerous. You two should consider leaving the territory until this is settled." Beau shook his head. "This is my home. I won't be run off my land." "And I'm done running," Flora added firmly. Morgan sighed. "I figured you'd say that. In that case, I'm deputizing every man I trust in town. We'll set up a patrol rotation, keep an eye on things here and in town." True to his word, for the next week, a steady stream of deputies rode circuits between town and the ranch. Flora found herself touched by the community's support. It seemed that, for all his money and influence, Harrison hadn't managed to win the loyalty of Willow Creek's residents. The attack changed something between Flora and Beau as well. The kiss he'd given her, for luck, wasn't mentioned, but she often caught him looking at her with an intensity that made her blush. For her part, she found herself noticing small things about him, the way the corners of his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how gentle his rough hands could be when tending an injured animal, the deep rumble of his laugh that seemed to vibrate through her whenever she heard it. One evening, as they sat by the fire after supper, Beau finally broke the silence that had been growing between them. "When this is over," he said quietly, "what will you do?" Flora looked up from her mending. "I haven't thought that far ahead. Just getting free of Harrison has consumed all my energy." "Would you go back east?" She considered the question. "I don't think so. There's nothing for me there now." She hesitated. "I've grown fond of Montana, the openness of it, the honesty, and the people." He asked, his eyes never leaving her face. Flora felt heat rise to her cheeks. Some of them. A slow smile spread across his face as he moved to sit beside her on the sofa. "Flora Sullivan," he said softly, "I know it's too soon and that you have every reason to be wary of men and their promises. But I need you to know that these past 2 weeks have been the least lonely of my life." Her heart hammered in her chest. "Mine too," she whispered. His hand came up to gently cup her cheek. "I'm not asking for anything now, just that when this is over you might consider staying. Not out of fear or necessity, but because you want to." Flora leaned into his touch. "I'm already considering it." This time when he kissed her, it wasn't swift or hard. It was gentle, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Instead, she found herself leaning closer, her hands coming up to rest against his chest. When they finally parted, Beau rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably stop," he murmured, though he made no move to release her. "Probably," she agreed, equally motionless. A pounding on the door made them both jump. Beau was on his feet instantly, gun in hand. "Hayes, open up, it's Morgan." Beau quickly opened the door to admit the sheriff, who looked as though he'd ridden hard to reach them. "What's happened?" Beau asked. "Yates broke Jenkins out of jail," Morgan said grimly. "Bribed my night deputy. They rode out of town an hour ago with at least 5 men. Here?" Flora asked, fear clutching at her throat. "Most likely. I've got men on the way, but they won't arrive before Yates does." Beau's expression hardened. "How long do we have?" "An hour, maybe less." "Then we'd better get ready," Beau said, turning to Flora. I want you to ride out now, head for the Wilson place. It's about 10 miles north. Sarah Wilson will hide you." Flora shook her head. "I'm not leaving you to face him alone. This isn't a discussion, Flora. I need to know you're safe, and I need to know you are," she shot back. "I won't spend the rest of my life wondering if you died because of me. If we do this, we do it together." The sheriff cleared his throat. "As touching as this lovers' quarrel is, we're wasting time. If you're both staying, we need a plan." In the end, the plan was simple. Use the ranch buildings for cover, set up defensive positions, and hold out until reinforcements arrived. The sheriff took the barn while Beau and Flora prepared to defend the main house. "Stay low and behind cover," Beau instructed as they moved furniture to block the windows. "If anything happens to me, don't try to help, just run for the trees behind the house." Flora nodded, though they both knew she had no intention of leaving him if he was hurt. The wait was excruciating. Every cricket's chirp, every rustle of wind through the pines made them tense. When the first shot finally came, it was almost a relief. There. Flora pointed to movement at the edge of the clearing. Figures on horseback emerging from the trees. Harrison rode at the front, his face visible in the moonlight. Even from a distance, Flora could see the rage contorting his handsome features. "Hayes," he bellowed. "Send out my wife and I might let you live." "She's not your wife anymore, Yates," Beau called back. "The divorce papers were filed. It's over." "Nothing's over until I say it is." Harrison's voice cracked with fury. "Flora, I know you're in there. Come out now, or I'll burn this place to the ground with you in it." Flora moved to the window, keeping to the side. "I'm not coming back, Harrison, ever." Her voice seemed to enrage him further. "You ungrateful whore, after everything I gave you." "All you gave me were bruises and fear," she replied steadily. "I'd rather die than spend another day with you." Harrison turned to his men. Burn it all." The attack came from all sides. Bullets riddled the house as the men spurred their horses forward. From the barn, Sheriff Morgan laid down covering fire, picking off one rider before being forced back inside by return fire. Beau moved with grim efficiency, firing measured shots through the windows, making each bullet count. Flora did her best to cover the rear of the house, her hands steady despite her racing heart. Through the chaos, she caught a glimpse of Harrison dismounting behind the cover of the water trough, a torch in his hand. "Beau, he's going to try to set the house on fire." Beau swore, moving to the front window. "I see him. Cover me, I'm going out there." "No, it's too dangerous. If he gets that torch to the house, we're dead anyway." Beau checked his revolver, then kissed her fiercely. "Just keep shooting, make them keep their heads down." Before she could protest further, he was gone, slipping out the back door into the darkness. Flora moved frantically between windows, firing at any movement she saw, praying that Beau would somehow make it to Harrison undetected. A scream of rage told her he had. Through the front window, she saw the two men grappling in the dirt, the torch lying forgotten nearby. Beau was larger, stronger, but Harrison fought with the desperation of a cornered animal. A gunshot froze Flora's heart. For a terrible moment, she couldn't tell who had been hit. Then Harrison staggered back, clutching his chest, a look of disbelief on his face. "You shot me," he gasped, falling to his knees. "You gave me no choice," Beau replied, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. Harrison's men, seeing their employer fallen, began to retreat. From the barn, Sheriff Morgan emerged, rifle ready, covering Beau as he stood over Harrison's crumpled form. Flora ran from the house, heedless of any remaining danger. She reached Beau's side just as he knelt to check Harrison's pulse. "Is he?" She couldn't finish the question. Beau nodded grimly. "He's gone." A strange numbness washed over her as she looked down at the man who had terrorized her for so long. There was no satisfaction in his death, only a profound relief that the nightmare was finally over. "You're hit," she said suddenly, noticing the blood seeping through Beau's shirt sleeve. "Just a graze," he assured her, though he winced when she touched it. The sound of approaching horses made them both tense, but it was the sheriff's reinforcements finally arriving. As the men dismounted and began securing the remaining outlaws, Morgan approached them. "It was self-defense," he said firmly. "We all saw it. He was trying to kill both of you." Beau nodded, his arm going around Flora's shoulders. "It's over," he murmured. "He can't hurt you anymore." In the days that followed, A formal inquest cleared Beau of any wrongdoing in Harrison's death. The hired guns were sentenced to prison terms, and with no family to claim his estate, Harrison's considerable assets were tied up in legal proceedings. Flora found herself truly free for the first time in years. Free of fear, free of control, free to choose her own path forward. 1 month to the day after Harrison's death, Beau found her sitting on the porch of the main house, her home now, as she'd moved in after the inquiry was settled. "I have something for you," he said, sitting beside her on the swing. Flora looked up from her book. "What is it?" From his pocket, Beau produced a small wooden box. "I've been holding onto this for a while, waiting for the right time." He opened it to reveal a simple gold band set with a small, perfect sapphire. "It was my mother's." Flora's breath caught. "Beau, I know it's fast," he said quickly, "and if you need more time, I understand, but I love you, Flora Sullivan. I think I started falling in love with you the moment you looked at me with those brave eyes and told me your husband would kill you if you ran." Tears welled up as she smiled at him. "And you said we'd ride faster than his hate." "And we did," he replied softly. "The question is, are you ready to ride into the future with me? Not because you need protection or safety, but because you want to build something together." Flora looked out at the ranch, at the land that had become her sanctuary, at the life she'd begun to create here. Then she looked at Beau, at the love shining in his eyes, the patience and strength that had never wavered. "Yes," she said simply, holding out her hand. "Yes, I am." Beau slipped the ring onto her finger, then gathered her into his arms. As the sun set over the Montana plains, casting long shadows across the land they would share, Flora felt the last pieces of her fear dissolve. In their place bloomed something she had almost forgotten existed: hope, unbound and limitless as the western sky.